Hi, everybody. This is Virginia Milner coming to you from the DeKalb County Library System. And I know I've been kind of hitting you up with a lot of really long videos. And I wanted to give you one that was super quick and super easy and really a lot of fun. The biggest thing that you're going to do on this one is make your own beads. We're going to make our own wire beads out of 20 and 24 gauge wire, and we're going to use leather cord and some end caps. Come back here, some end caps, jump rings, open and closed jump rings, and we're going to make a really neat bracelet. So we're going to get started on that because it does take a minute to make these little beads. They're super cute, I think. Show you what they look like. Yeah, these are so neat, and they make it really individual and unique for you because you can choose whatever color wire you want to use. You can use one color, you can combine two colors of wire. I've found several different ways to make these little beads, and I'm going to be showing you different ways to make them that can be used for spacers or actual links. So there are several different ways that you can make these beads and make them work for you. So we've done it before on another bracelet that we had. Where is it? I see it over there. I'm not gonna wrestle it off of that display. Anyway, we've made them before. I love it. I think they came out great. Got a lot of questions from people. Where did you get those beads? Did you really make those beads? Yes, they're so super simple to make, and I'm going to show you how to make them right now. So let's get started. Let me get down here to the other camera so I can show you how to make your own twisted wire beads. So the first thing that you need, depending on the size bead that you want, and the beads that I have here are approximately 1/2 inch because I'm putting them on a bracelet, and they don't need to be very long. So I'm making a 1/2 inch bead, and for that I will need 6 inches of 20 gauge wire. You can also use 18 gauge wire for this, but you don't have to. Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot to mention the tools. You need round nose pliers, chain nose or square nose pliers, and cutters. I also have these flat head pliers but they aren't absolutely necessary. You can do the same thing with the square pliers. So those are the tools that we need. I'm cutting 6 inches of 20 gauge wire. And I need enough 24 gauge wire to make a coil along this 20 gauge wire that's 2 inches long. And so I need about 20 inches of wire for that. Sounds like a lot, I know. 20 inches to make 2 inches. Yikes. So basically 10 inches per inch. So 12, 20, probably gonna have a little left, but that's okay. All right. So the first thing that I want to do is take my 20 gauge wire and make my end, the end of it, which is going to mean I'm going to take my pliers. I'm going to grasp the wire at the fattest part, the biggest part of my pliers, which is right there in the back, just before you get to the hilt, and I'm going to make a loop. So I'm just going to start wrapping until I have a nice loop. And so there's my loop. And then I want to continue. That might be a little bit bigger than I need. I'm going to collapse that in a little bit. There we go. So that's as far back as I need to go on my pliers. There we go. So then once I have my loop, I'm going to continue wrapping. And this little tail end here, I want that to be heading out towards the tip of my pliers. So I'm just going to continue wrapping until I have 3 loops. So there's 2, there's the end. So there's 1 loop. That's the second loop. I'm going to keep going until I have 3 full loops. And there's my little tip. And that's where I'm going to stop wrapping. So now I have 3 loops. I'm going to bring this down just a tad closer. Okay, so there's my beginning. And so what I'm going to do now is take my 24 gauge wire and I'm going to wrap it around my 20 gauge wire. So just wrapping it along the stem. So all I need to do is give myself a little bit of a tail to hold on to, and I'm going to start wrapping. Start with a nice loop. I like to get it nice and tight in the beginning. So there we go. I've got this tail to hold on to. I also have this little, my loops to hold on to while I wrap. So I'm just going to wrap around the tail of my 20 gauge wire and just keep wrapping until I have 2 inches of wire wrapped around my 20 gauge. And if you have a spool of wire that you want to wrap from, you can do that. You can leave it on the spool, and instead of wrapping the way I'm doing like this, you can just twirl your 20 gauge around and hold this steady. And then you don't have to cut it off and worry about losing ends of your wire. But if you don't have that, which if you're getting a kit, you'll be getting a piece of wire, just a long piece of wire to work from. You can do this, but I just wanted to tell you that there are a couple of different ways you can do this wrapping. If you get tired of wrapping like this, you can twirl instead. Or you can go back and forth and do this, whichever strikes your fancy. Now, every once in a while, I like to look at it and see if my rings are close enough together. See, there's a little space there. So I'll just push it together until they're nice and close again. And then just keep wrapping. Looks like I have at least a good 3/4 of an inch so far. Push it together. Let's see what we have. Yes, I have about almost 3/4 of an inch. And you can see how much wire I have left. When I get to an inch, I'm going to measure to see how much wire I have left on here to do my other inch. So just keep wrapping. Push the wires together. A few more wraps. And let's check it out. See what I've got. Not quite. I've got about 7/8 of an inch. Again, I'm going to measure it an inch and see how much of this 24 gauge wire that I have left of the 20 inches that I cut. And let's check it out. Not quite, almost there. Another 2 wraps or so, and I'll be at an inch. 1, 2, push them together. There we go. Now I have an inch. Let's see how much of that 20 inches of wire that I cut that I have left. Oh, yeah, it looks like about a little over a foot. Yes, I have about 14 inches left of the 20. So obviously 20 inches is more than I need, way more. But I can use that tail to make my next one. I'll push these together so I can see some spaces in there. See those little spaces? Let's just push it together. Spaces are not going to matter much once you start twisting them around to make your coil, but I like a lot of coverage. Okay, so let's keep going. Now, the other trick that you can that you have is to pull this over. Then you don't have to worry about going around that long expanse of wire. Now, it's a lot faster because I pulled it down so that I don't have to do this to get around this. And also, the shorter your wire is, the faster it moves because you don't have to duck and dodge that long strand of wire. All right, let's see where we are. I think we're a good 1.5 inches at least. Push those together. 1.5 inches on the nose. Okay. Okay, let's keep wrapping. Wrap, 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 wrap. This is one of those things you do while you're listening to music or watching television and you just want some entertainment. It's not hard, it's just repetitive. All right, let's see where we are. 1 3/4 maybe. 1 inch and a little over 3/4. We're almost there. And look at how much wire I have left that I can use for the next bead. And by the way, you need to make 7 of them for this particular bracelet we're making. So that's why I said not hard, just repetitive. Okay, what do we got here? Almost 2 inches. And I have that little tail on the other side that I'm going to loop around too. So okay, push those together. I have about 1 7/8. So I'm going to go to this side and wrap up this small tail here. Is we'll go ahead and use that up. The other end. What does that give me? That gives me, ladies and gentlemen, that gives me 2 inches. So now all I need to do, I have a smattering above 2 inches by the time I push this down. So now all I need to do is push my little tail down. And I find the easiest way to do that is to give this a little curve. Just curve this around. I don't know if you can see that. I'm getting a lot of darkness. Probably because it's night. Anyway, I like to bend that so that it's got a little curve in it. You can see that. There. So it's got a little curve. And then I'll take my flat pliers and push it down until it curves, until it wraps itself around my 20 gauge stem. Just push that down so it's not sticking up. There we go. Okay, give it one more little measure. I've got my 2 inches and a tiny bit over. Push these together, nice and close. I think we're good. Yes. So now what I want to do is cut off this other side. Let's take my clippers and just cut those off, cut that end off. Let's see how much we had left, just for the heck of it. I get a little over 6, oh geez whiz, a little over 6.5 inches left. So I only needed about 14 inches. That would have been plenty. So now you know, 14 inches of wire to get 2 inches of wrap. So now what I'm going to do is take my coil. I'm going to push down this little end here. One that's sticking up. There we go. And then I'm going to pull the coil down until it's resting up against my loop. There we go. Didn't want to go. So now my coil is right up here at the bottom of my loop. Next up is to wrap it into my coil. So I just slide my loop over my pliers, and then I just start to wrap the coils around my pliers. And you don't want to squeeze because you'll smash your coils. You just want to lightly use it as a guide, as a way to work it around. And if you don't use pliers, you can always, I don't have anything out here, but you can always just wrap it around something else, just holding this and wrapping it around something that's not stabilized, like the pliers. If you want to just wrap it around a very narrow rod or something like that. But if you just easily and gently roll it around your pliers, you don't have to worry about squeezing or anything like that. Now notice how the rings start to open up a little bit, and that is normal. That's what it's supposed to do, so it gives it a coiled look once you've got it wrapped around. And I just keep on wrapping. And once I get it all the way around to the end of the coils, you'll see these coils match up. There's the end on that side, and there's the end on this side. They nicely match. And then I just keep rotating until I have 3 wraps on the other end of bare 20 gauge wired coil, just like I did at the very beginning. So I'm on my second wrap around, and let's go with the third one, and then we're going to cut off whatever we have left. Just keep wrapping. What am I doing? I'm sliding. Well, the one thing I don't want to do, I'm unwrapping because I was sliding this up, and I don't want that. I want the coils to be a consistent size. So I want my coils to be the same size as on this side. And that was down near the base of my pliers. So I just unwrapped it a little bit so I can make sure it's big enough. So I'm going to keep wrapping. Just started my coils again, or my loops again, I guess I should say. I'm going to keep wrapping until I have 3 coils. See, there's 1, 2, and just keep going until I get to my 3rd one. All the way around, and there we go. There's the first end, and there's the second end, and then I just cut off this tail. Just cut it right off where the coils end and the bare wire, the bare 20 gauge wire begins. That's where I cut. So there's my bare wire beginning right here. And I'm going to cut it off on the opposite side, right at that spot. Yeah, there's my coil. And I'm just going to push this in just a little bit so it's not sticking up. And there we have it. There we have it, ladies and gents. Our very own uncoiled bead. Isn't that awesome? Okay, now we're going to put it to work. I have made the other 6 that I need, and we're going to make these into a bracelet. So what we're going to do is take some leather, and what I've got here is 4 pieces of leather. You can decide what size, 1.5 millimeters, 2 millimeters. It just depends on the look that you're going for. But I have 4 pieces of wire here, of cord here, and leather cord. And what I need to do is make sure it goes around the length of my, or the circumference of my arm. And mine is about 7 inches. So I've got a little more than I need, because you're better off giving yourself at least a good 1.5 to 2 inches more than you need, because you also have to accommodate beads that take up some space on your arm. So if your arm is 7 inches around and you only give yourself 7 inches, you might end up short. You also have to realize that you're going to be using clamps that are going to extend it a little longer, and a clasp, which is also going to extend it a little longer. Those two things are going to give me another 1.5 inches or so of space back in the back where I clasp it. So I've gone ahead and given myself a good 7 inches of wire or cord. I'm going to make that mistake a lot because I work a lot with wire. But anyway, I've given myself a good 7 inches cord, and I can cut off what I don't need, because the beads that I'm putting on can be adjusted. Okay, enough chit chat. The first thing I'm going to do is take 2 of my cords, and I'm going to slide on one of my beads. So that's going to be my center. And then I'm going to take another one of my cords, and I'm going to put it next to one of the center cords. So I have one of the center cords and another cord. I'm going to slide a bead on. And then I'm going to take the other half of the center cord and the 4th cord, and I'm going to slide on a bead. Okay, so you can see it's coming together. This is 1/2 of my design here. I saw this bracelet like this a long time ago, except that they didn't use curated or your own unique beads. They just used a regular bead, but I thought the design was really pretty, so I'm bringing it to you. So now I'm going to go to the other side. I'm going to grab one of the outer cords and one of the inner cords, slide a bead on just like I did on the other side, and then do the same thing on the other half. Slide a bead on. The one outer and one inner cord. So here's what we have so far. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to the inside, the two center cords, and I'm going to slide a bead on one side and do the same on the opposite end. The two center cords, slide on a bead. So now this is what we have. Here we go. So now it's time to put on my clamps. Now, what I would suggest that you do is put the clamp on one side and then measure it on your arm to see if you need to cut any off, because these beads are shiftable. They shift, so you don't have to worry about, should I cut both ends off? You don't have to. You just need to cut. Go ahead and put the clamp on one end, measure your wrist to see if it's fitting, and then cut off what you need, what you don't need from on the other end. Okay, so now I have my outer beads here, my outer wires, and my inner wires, and I want to make sure they're not overlapping. I want to make sure that they're side by side, like so. And I'm going to grab my clamp. Make sure the ends are all together and they match up like that. So you can see that. There we go. Make sure they're not overlapping. Nice and straight. And I'm going to take my clamp. I'm going to slide it over my 4 pieces of cord. And I like to start to squeeze it a little bit, not all the way, just a little. So I have everything in there, and then make whatever adjustments I need. If a piece of cord is poking out one side or the other, I can still adjust it before I close it all the way up. So you can see there's a little piece of cord sticking out on this side. And here we go. It looks good on both sides. And then I'll take my pliers, my flat pliers, and squeeze it nice and tight. And so there's one side. There we go. Yeah. I hope this is coming out. It looks awfully dark. I hope you can see what I'm doing. There we go. I'm going to give it another little squeeze to make sure it's nice and tight. Tight on a little bit. Very good. Then I'm going to go to the other side. And I'm going to adjust my beads a little bit so I can try this on my arm and make sure it's not going to be too big. So there we go. Let's try it on. and see what we've got. Around here. Yes, I can cut off a bit. I can lose a good inch or so, maybe 3/4 of an inch, because I still have a clasp, but that's going to go in there. I'm going to cut it down to about here. That'll give me enough to house my clasp. And then you can also make your clasp the size that you need according to what your arm length is. So there's a lot of adjustables that go that make this very, very easy. Measure one more time. Measure twice, cut once. The rule of thumb in sewing, and that way you don't make any mistakes. So yes, I'm going to cut off a good inch. Here we go, that's about half. So I'm going to cut off a good inch to accommodate my clasp. It's nice and even. There we go. That off. And let me go ahead my other clamp here. And put that on. And this other one, I've already put the jump rings on there. Check, make sure everything's straight and nothing is overlapping. Just gonna smooth it out. Okay. And take the clamp, slide it on. And again, I like to close it up a little bit with my fingers before I completely crimp it. We got that on there. And I pulled it back off like an idiot. Okay, let's get back on there. Okay, here we go. Check it out. Come on, stop it. Yes. Scooch that in. Close it up a little bit and then check it out. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Everything's encumbered or enclosed, I guess I should say. Give it a good squeeze with my pliers. Here's. Got a tug, make sure it's all nice and neat and tidy. And there we have it. Adjust my beads the way I want them to look. And what you can do is go back if you want to. If you don't like them sliding around like European beads do, you can always clamp these ends down a little bit. If you want them to stay stationary in one particular pattern, you can do that. And I think the fun of this is that it kind of moves around a little bit. So there we go. And now it's time to put our jump rings on the other side. I already put the jump rings on this side. And what I like to do is put 2 open jump rings on the clasp part itself, the clamp itself, and then use a closed jump ring for our clasp to go into. Then you don't have to worry about it sliding out or off. And you can't really use 2 jump rings with the clasp because it'll always be fighting you trying to find both of the jump rings. So, proper way to open a jump ring. Take your pliers, put the pliers on one side of your opening, which is right here. You can take your thumb and push down on the other side beside the opening, and you have a nice open jump ring. I'm going to go ahead and put this on, and then I'm going to show you how to another way to open the jump ring. So now what I want to do is put my closed jump ring on the open jump ring and slide that open jump ring inside the clamp loop and close it. See how easy that is? If you open it side to side, you can just squeeze it closed. And now I have my second jump ring. And here's the other way that you can open it. Take your pliers, put it on the side just like we did before. Here's the opening. Put the pliers on one side, grab another pair of pliers, and grab your jump ring on the other side and twist. And again, you have a nice clean opening. Let's slide that jump ring inside the clamp loop and inside the closed jump ring, making sure that this other jump ring is out of the way. You don't want to hook up the 2 open jump rings. You want to make sure that they're separate. And then squeeze the jump ring closed. And then if you need to make some adjustments like I do, just adjust it until you have a nice closed ring. There we go. And so there is our loop, because we're going to be making a decorative S clasp, which means it will fasten on both or either side. So now for that, we're going to take 20 gauge wire, seed about 3.5 inches. Let's give it about, let me see. It'll depend on how big I need my clasp to be. Not too big, because look at that, it fits. I need a little bit of wiggle room up here, but not a lot. Yeah. So I'm going to give myself about 3.5 inches, because I need about 1/4 inch on each side for the loops. So that's 1/2 inch. I need another 1/2 inch at least for my hook. So that's another inch. So we're looking at 1.5 inches. And then I'm going to do a little decoration in the center. So let me give myself 3.5. And if I need to cut something off, I will. So I've got 3.5 inches of wire. I'm going to take my pliers, my round nose pliers. I'm going to find the center of my wire. I'm just eyeballing it. And I'm going to bend one side down and over to meet the other side of my wire. And then I'm going to take the other wire, the longer one, and I'm going to bend that down over the other side of my pliers, like so. Then I'm going to slide my pliers out, and I have this nice little S shape. And now I'm going to make a shepherd's hook on each end. I only need about 1 inch of wire to do that. So I need to clip off what I don't need on this side, which I knew I was going to have to do. Hold on to that tail so it doesn't fly. Same on this side, cutting off about 1/8 of an inch. And that little tip. Measure it again, make sure. Good. And good. All right. So what I'm going to do now, straighten this out a little bit, is make a shepherd's hook. So I'm going to make a little tiny loop. See which way you want it to go, that way. Okay. I want to make a little tiny loop at the very end of my wire. And when I say tiny, I mean grab the wire with the very tip of your pliers. It's making a tiny little loop. I'm just going to go about 3/4 of the way around. Almost closed, but not quite. I'm about 3/4 of the way around. And I'm going to take my flat pliers and I'm going to squeeze this little tip down here at the bottom towards the head of my wire. So I'm just going to squish it closed. And you have to be patient. Don't want to try to squeeze it all at once. Otherwise, it'll collapse on you in a way that you don't want. So now I have a little nub. And now I'm going to make a shepherd's hook. And the way I'm going to do that is to take my pliers, slide it all the way down to the hip, or take my wire and slide it all the way down to the hilt of my pliers. And I'm going to wrap my pliers around until I have, I'm off camera, darn, until I have a little shepherd's hook on one side, like so. Here's my little shepherd's hook. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with the shepherd's hook going that way. So I want to make another little loop. This loop, this tiny loop, is going towards the large shepherd hook, the little loop on the large shepherd hook, just to give you some directional advice. So again, I'm going to grab the tip of my wire with the tip of my pliers, and I'm going to make a loop that's going over there. I'm going to make a loop that's going towards my other shepherd's hook. So I'm going to make this tiny loop. Let's make this, there we go. So you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to make a little tiny loop, about 3/4 of the way around. Slowly, slowly. A little bit more. Okay, then I'm going to take my pliers, my flat pliers, and I'm going to squeeze that down to a little nub. There we go. And now I'm going to make my other shepherd's hook. There's the bottom of my loop. I call the bottom the part where the little end is. I'm going to slide my loop down my pliers till I get to the largest part. I have the teeniest, tiniest little bit of space between the head and the pliers, but not much. I'm going to wrap my pliers around until I have a nice little shepherd's hook. And there we go. And there is my clasp. Yay. And now what you can do to strengthen your clasp, because I use 20 gauge wire, you can use 18 gauge wire to make it a little stronger. But what you can do is take a little rubber mallet that I got from the dollar store. I love this guy. And you can just pound it out. Now, I'm not going to talk while I'm pounding because my computer doesn't like that, and it will shut off the sound because it does not like sudden noises. So I'm going to pound and you can just watch. And you don't have to kill it. You just have to give it a few taps. Flip it over, do the same thing. And all that does is give it a little strength, because this is soft wire and it will work hard. And the more you work with it, the more stiff and tough it gets. So there we go. There's my clasp. And what I love about this particular type of clasp is that it can fasten. It's a separate piece, so it can fasten on either side. You don't have to worry about whether you're right-handed or left-handed in order to get it fastened. You just have to fasten it on the side that you like. Now, I like mine to be closed up against the other wire, which means it's not as easy to get it on the lid, but it's also not going to come off of the lid. I like to keep it a little bit closed so I know it won't slide out. There we go. And if I have it a little bit closed, it'll just snap into place instead of, I'm gonna open it up just a little. It'll snap into place and I don't have to worry about it sliding back off. And now you can see why I said we wanted a teeny tiny little nub, because it has to go in that jump ring and it can't be too big. And then you can adjust your little beads the way you want them. And there's your bracelet. Here it is. I can slide them down so that they completely match up and conform into a specific pattern. Or I can let them do their thing. There we go. Let's try it on. Let's try it on and see what it looks like. Yeah. It's going to get a little big for my arm, but that's okay. Christmas is around the corner. No, I always try to, I have these reader glasses on. I'm always trying to fasten the bracelet with the readers and wondering why the heck I can't see, because you make everything blurry when it's too close up. Get on there. Oh, I also need to flip it this way. It's easier if I have the loop hanging down, and then I can work with the hook instead of trying to work with the loop. Get on there. Oh my goodness. Look, oh, my glasses are falling off. I'm glad you can't see this, because I just noticed that I'm off camera trying to fasten this bracelet. So embarrassing. I still got a lot to get on. I don't know why I don't use the little form that I have. I do, because that thing is freakishly small. I think it's about 5 inches around. Anyway, there's my bracelet. It is a little large, but that's because my clasp ended up being, instead of 1/2 inch, I made it a little bit too big. It ended up being a good full inch. So I will be fixing that. But anyway, there's my bracelet. This design was actually for a guy. So it's going to be a little bit, on a man's arm, this is going to spread out a lot more because it's going to have more space. And the way it's supposed to look is one on the outside here, and then these 2 on the side, 1 in the center, 2 on the side, and 1 on the outside. So it's supposed to kind of be like that. But because I have a girly girl arm, it doesn't like me as much because these beads are large, 1/2 inch each. That takes up about 3 inches of space, and the top of my arm is only about 2. But there we go. That's the way it's supposed to look. If you make this for a guy, and I deliberately put it on a dark cord so that you could see what it would look like for a guy, this is a really neat bracelet for a guy. I think it's kind of awesome. But for you, you can make these beads a little smaller if you want, or not. It's up to you. It depends on your arm and your arm size and what you want it to look like. But it's sort of like those European beads where the beads just kind of migrate in whatever ways they want to go. And you can also take your pliers, like I had mentioned, and squeeze these a little bit. If you want them in a specific place, you don't want them to move, especially these on the ends, you can squeeze these a little tighter so that there's not as much space in there and they won't move around as much. So I could do that. Let's give it a little squeeze so that it's a little more controlled. But there you go. There's my bracelet. Yeah, I like it. Perfect for the upcoming winter months. It'll go with anything, absolutely anything in the colors that I used, because I used this antique bronze, and I used a burgundy, a dark red, dark burgundy wire or cords. That's awesome, if I'm going to say so myself. But I am going to bring this down a little bit because it is a little bigger than I like. I like my bracelets to be closer. I'm not a big bangle person, and I don't, I just like them to be a little smaller. So I'll fix that. That's okay. That's our piece for the day. A lot easier. I chitter chattered a lot more simply because there wasn't as much to do. But I know that in the last few videos I've had have been over an hour, and I'm always afraid it's going to scare people away. They're going to take one look and go, ah, no, not doing that. So this one was a piece of cake, I thought. But anyway, that's our piece for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will come back for more videos. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy your weekend, and I will see you later, or actually more accurately, you will see me later. Bye-bye. I'm still here, aren't I? Okay. All right. Okay. Now I'm out. See ya.